Hi everyone, I'm your host, Lisa Fazio, and this is Wild Under Root, a podcast about plants, place, and magic.
Even if lightning strikes, or if thunder splits the sky, if the mountains fall and rivers overflow, you can never stop a seed from growing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wild Under Root podcast with myself, Lisa Fazio. And today my guest is Jordan Reed, who I met because she participated in my Della Medicina 1 class, which is about plants and ancestral reclamation, based from my own lineage of Italian American. So Jordan was part of that class, and then she did some work with a bunch of ancestral plants and some of the exercises that we did in the class, and shortly after had a pretty amazing experience that she shared with me. And after hearing the experience, I just felt like, wow, I think this is something that a lot of people would be inspired by and feel in solidarity with, because Jordan, you're adopted. And one of the big questions that always comes to me, and it comes up in ancestral work in general, is when folks don't have any idea of their ancestry, whether because they're adopted or they just lost that connection for the multiple reasons that happens. It can really feel like a block for people. And so it just felt like this would be an inspiring story. So welcome, Jordan, and thank you. We've been talking obviously before we started recording. So I've already said thank you, but I'm just going to say it again because I really do appreciate you taking your time. I know you've got a little one and a teenager and a job and all the things. So thank you. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you share some of what you were sharing with me about your work in the world, which I feel also is really inspiring to others. So, and I'll just say for my land acknowledgement, I am coming to you from Haudenosaunee, aka Iroquois territory in New York State, as always, here in the Adirondack foothills. And Jordan is coming from Nova Scotia, Canada, and I'll let you do your land acknowledgement and let us know about your work in the world. Welcome, Jordan.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I think you're right. It's so important to share stories on this note for people who are adopted when we're talking about ancestral work, because it almost seems untouchable, unreachable, but you can get there. And so I'm happy to share my story. I'm talking to you from Mi'kma'ki, which is the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq people, also known as Nova Scotia, Halifax, Nova Scotia, city in eastern Canada. So the work that I do, the day-to-day work that I do in the world is basically, I'm the executive director, CEO of a company that brings international students into Canada and helps them with their English language proficiency, because they have a goal of attending university abroad in Canada. And here in Canada, I'm not sure how it is in the US, but you do have to show your English language proficiency in order to attend university here. So we help them meet their language goals so they can move on with their life and attend university. A lot of them have a goal of becoming a permanent resident of Canada. So doing university is a first step to getting that. So I've helped many people get their permanent residency, and some employees as well. So not just helping international students, but also some of the employees as well. Right now we're doing everything online because of COVID. So our reach it's a little bit bigger, but we're in a different competitive market because we're online. We're competing with everybody online, and we're not just selling Nova Scotia. So a little bit of a change there, but that's okay. And one thing we do focus on as a school that does set us apart is we have our students out in the community doing hundreds and hundreds of hours of volunteerism while they study with us. And we have a curriculum focus on social justice, very zero tolerance policy for any type of anything that doesn't fall into the category of anti-oppression. We have a very serious zero tolerance policy for it. And it's been really beautiful. We've had students come from countries where it's the cultural norm to be homophobic, like widely the cultural norm to be homophobic. And very hatefully homophobic. And we've had students come and study with us, and by the end of their time studying with us, they're at the front of the Pride Parade in the summertime, waving the flag, like, total 180 mindset change.
Amazing.
And conversations talking about anti-racism and the many facets within that. We have amazing conversations with our students and really doing groundbreaking work on many different levels beyond just learning English. But we also do other language studies too. And actually, I'm about to launch a program called Learn the Language of the Land. And it's going to be Mi'kmaq language lessons, which will be free to all Mi'kmaq people. And then there'll be a fee for non-Mi'kmaq people. But really excited about that. And I think we're going to be launching a Japanese program here soon. So trying our best to help people connect with the world around them, and just doing what we can with the job and the position that we're in. And I myself left home at 17 and started traveling the world. So it's a job that's in line with my understanding of culture and cultural connections and languages. I'm a multilingual speaker. And I did a master's degree in education, specifically in this language acquisition field. So it all lined up well for me. My undergraduate degree was in international development, and I did a minor in comparative religious studies. So there's many different crossovers that I weave into my everyday business. But I personally don't. I was just going to say, I didn't feel it's too related with my herb practice and my ancestral work and the magic I do at home, but you seem to think it is. So I'm open to hearing that too.
Oh yeah. I feel like it's so relevant. I think, like we talked about before we started recording, just having cultural competency and ethics definitely helps in both herbal work and in ancestral work. I think it helps. A big part of my ancestral work in the world is focusing on ethics and respect because of the colonial backdrop that the colonial structure that we're in. I think that those things need to be constantly being like re-watered and re-nourished and re-brought into the conversation so that they don't like fall to the side. And we don't get in our, well, I can't speak for Canada. Here in the US anyway, I'm assuming it's similar there, but here in the US, we don't get cultural competency in any formal way. I don't know about international students coming in. I'm not sure, what the expectation for them learning English is or whatnot, if there's programs. I don't have any idea. But in the country here, we're not even taught a second language until middle school. And then usually the options, depending on where you are, but like, for instance, in the school, this is a rural school district, Title I school, which is a very poor school. there's one you can learn Spanish, and the teachers aren't certified usually because they can't get certified teachers. So our cultural competency, I've talked about this before, but I feel like a lot of my like international learning outside of personal travel was just because I grew up in an immigrant neighborhood in a refugee center. And
for sure.
So like, but it wasn't, there was no like elder support or any like social like infrastructure for that learning. It was really like, just, learning by fire, through trial and error, with a lot of ethnic and racial tension in everyday life that we all had to learn to negotiate. So I do feel super relevant because I definitely early on developmentally learned ethnic and cultural sensitivity as a means of like avoiding conflict, really, and as a means of making friends.
So
yes.
Well, the town I came from was very, very, very white. Very small town, wealthy town, very, very white. And still largely is, although there's been much more diversity. There's been some initiatives with immigration over the years and things like that. It's a little bit different in Canada, only slightly. I mean, I would say both countries are just as oppressive towards BIPOC. I mean, the white supremacy we live in is global. But so linguistically, I had cultural competency. I was in a French immersion program right from, I think it was from kindergarten. And my province actually is fully bilingual. So the signs are both in French and in English. And French and English in Canada generally have a friendly relationship. Our prime ministers, our current prime minister does his addresses in both languages, for example. But we have the same problems that you have in the US as well, just smaller scale because there's fewer people probably. So I think probably my earliest understanding of cultural competency would have been linguistically and understanding the importance of knowing as many languages as possible. And that was always a goal for me. And then the curiosity comes from, well, what comes with this language? What culture comes with this language? Where do these people come from? What do they eat? How do they celebrate? What do they wear? What do they look like? If they look like something, what religions do they practice? Those are all the things that you start to question when you start to learn another language. And I was always very, very interested in that.
You need to know that in order to speak the language properly, because there's so many there's so many nuances, it's like,
yes, completely.
I know just my minimal use of learning of Italian and being in Italy, that you learn something from a class or a book or a tape or whatever, and then you say it to somebody in that actual culture and they just look at you like, what? Because if you don't know the cultural context of what you're saying or what the vernacular use of certain words and phrases are, you're out, right? Like you're not going to make sense. So what other languages do you speak? I know you
English and French, fully bilingual. And then over the years I picked up Spanish, Korean, Mandarin. I do work in China quite a bit, not lately because I have a 2-year-old and COVID. And I used to live in Korea. So I lived on a very small island in southern Korea where people didn't speak English. So you kind of had to pick it up immediately. Although it's been a long time since I've used it. And Spanish is just one of those things, if you're going to travel, you need to know Spanish. But other languages on my goal list, or I would love to work more on my Mandarin. And I think my son's planning on moving to Japan And so probably I'll pick that up a little bit better, and Arabic. So those are sort
Oh,
of
wow.
on my goals. When there's time.
Yeah, I know. So much to do, so much time, so little to do. Wait, scratch that.
Well, and Italian.
Yeah. You'd pick up Italian quick, I'm
Oh,
sure.
so quickly. I've been to
Yeah.
Italy several times, and it's always like, a few days in the Spanish and the French, and it all collides, and I survived just fine.
So do you want to this segue into sharing your genetic lineage, because you're adopted,
Yeah.
and then your adopted lineages, if you want to share those?
Yeah, so genetically, biologically, my biological father is Italian American, grew up in Boston, and my biological mother is actually from the same province in Canada that I'm from, and her lineage is French and settler colonial. So from I believe it was, I think actually, yeah, settlers from France. And then I think some from England as well. And that's very common in the part of Canada that I'm in, the French colonial settlers. So that's kind of that side. And I'm really not, I'm connected to my biological mother. We are friends. I'm really not too connected to her lineage, though. Although it does go back to France. And I did have a pretty intense moment in France in the forest at one point where I felt like I had been in this forest before, and this was a place where women had gathered to do, what women do under the moonlight. And I had gone back to the elder in this very, very, very small town. Maybe 300 people live in this town. And I said, I was just down by the water on this big hike, and I had this overwhelming sense that this is where witches used to gather. And he said, yes, traditionally that's where the women used to gather on the full moon, like hundreds of years ago. So there was something there, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I think that was like in my blood somehow,
Oh, I'm getting
anyway,
the chills.
it was incredible. To this day, I think that's probably one of my favorite places in the whole world, that town and that forest. And I've been to over 40, 45 countries, something like that. Been traveling for a long time. I left home at 17. So I don't say that lightly when I say, the energy there for me was incredible. And then on my biological father's side, I had traveled to Italy for the first time when I was, I want to say 18 or 19. And my mom remembers me saying at the time that I felt like I was home, because we never knew anything about my lineage at all until I was 25. So this was long before I had known anything. I had no identifiers. I had no connection, bloodline connection to speak of. But my mom who raised me, she remembers me saying when I first arrived in Italy, and I don't even remember where it would have been, because I've been all over, but I had said, I feel homecoming here. I might be Italian.
Oh, I mean, I'm just getting, because, one of the questions I was going to ask you, being as you're so widely traveled, is if you felt, I know myself, and I already knew my lineage, so, could have been my expectation, but I know going to my ancestral homelands as opposed to going to other places
You felt it.
So I felt it. And
you've been to Ireland too, you said.
Yeah, I've been to both my ancestral homelands, and it felt it in both places in different ways in both places, but like definitely like no other place I've ever been that I've even here where my family's been for 200 years. I feel connected here deeply, but in a different way. So I'm curious about. So yeah,
I did have that feeling, and I had no idea about, like, this was before ancestry.com type thing. And this was before I had ever made contact with my biological mother. And I did feel it. And people would say, like, the saying, where are you from? Like, and then I'm like, Atlantic Canada, but they're like,
Yeah.
where are you from? You know, they want to know like your lineage and that. So I would eventually said, I don't know, but I think I might be Italian. I just started saying it. Turns out it was true.
Yeah.
But I have to say, the last time I went to Italy, I've probably been to Italy because I pop in for work a few times, probably 5 times, something like that. The last time, maybe the last 2 times, I didn't feel a connection more than just it's Italy, which is amazing, which everyone's happy to be in, you know?
Yeah.
But that first time I went, I really felt it. And also, I have never been to Sicily. And so we can get into that later, but it turns out that that's where my ancestors came from. So probably when I go there, I'll have a totally new sentiment about it all. I'm certain I will.
I'm assuming, do you follow, just speaking of Sicily, I'm assuming you follow Mary Beth Bonfilio?
Oh yeah, she's the one who offers the,
Yeah.
is it,
Yeah.
what's it called?
Radici Siciliani or something.
Oh, yes.
Unless I'm pronouncing.
Oh, I would love to go on that trip.
Yeah.
I can't because I'm moving, but
Yeah.
I did write to her and ask if she was going to do it next year because I would love to go. Have you done it?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Yeah.
Well, if you want to wait, we can go next year together.
Yeah. I think I'm assuming she'll, I think as long as there's a need, she'll.
I think that's what she said.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a passion, obviously.
It's a passion.
She
Yeah.
probably wants to keep doing it as much as possible.
It's like her path. It's like part of her path.
Well, maybe we should just elaborate more for people listening what it is. Essentially, it's
great.
A tour of Sicily that's much more than tour, that's interwoven with herbs, and I think she does some sites to do with Black Madonna.
Yeah, and there's cooking, there's some other, I think some like maybe fiber arts. So it's really like it's not so much a tour as a like real like
immersive experience.
It's immersive like rooting experience,
especially to connect with one's ancestral land.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be Sicilian or Italian because it's like it's a deep land connection that can transcend to like any ancestry.
Yeah.
But
for those who are drawn to it though for that reason, would be like, highlight of the life type thing.
I'll put a link to Mary Beth's contact stuff.
That's a great idea.
So so your biological lineage is French and Italian.
Yeah, when I'm in France too, I have to say I always feel very grounded, like almost like I would say like a second, as far as being outside of North America. I don't consider being in the US feels like home at all. So I should just say, as far as being outside of Canada, France feels like a second home. I've been there many times, but it's not just that. And it's not just that linguistically I'm so comfortable there. I think there's something deeper there probably. There's just a natural sense of connection. Yeah. I've always felt that way about France.
So that's like, I think an across the board feeling that a lot of people have when they go, and it's really interesting to hear somebody who's adopted who didn't even know. So for me, it's like, I kind of anticipated, and you don't know, I anticipated that feeling, and you don't know if, your anticipation just like creates it, kind of brings it to, like, oh, I'm experiencing this because I'm home. And then also, like I'll say in Italy, being as I was raised with people who are Italian immigrants and hearing Italian and seeing Italian faces and all those things, like there's that too for me, that familiarity of like, oh, this feels like so home to me, like everybody looks like me or whatever. But I also feel that deeper, like, blood and bone kind of connection there. So it's good to hear that, it's like, even when you're not expecting it, that's there. Cause I think it's real, I think it's a real thing that we feel.
In my experience, it's very real because this was years before I had proof,
And it's interesting because it's like, I can't even put it like when I think about like, so it's like, I do feel very connected in here in New York State where I live in the foothills. Like I feel a very deep sense of home here. As I said, my family, both sides, have been here. My Italian side only for 2 generations, and my Irish side for 4 or 5 generations.
Wow.
So in this general, not exactly where I am, but in this, there's like 2 counties here where everybody's always lived. And I do feel, very connected.
I feel like you could just eat the dirt there and just be healed of whatever ails you.
But it's not the same. I just have to say, it's not the same. And I don't even know how to, it's not 3-dimensional even. It's not linear, and it's not hierarchical. It's not like I feel more something here or there. It's just something different in my ancestral homelands that maybe the word is deeper or longer.
Well,
I don't know.
Maybe
It's
there's
like,
a deep longing that generationally is passed down because for whatever reason, your people had to leave those homelands.
I mean, there's
so
definitely that. There's the
longing
there's
is
the grief. It's
still in
like
you,
it's like, oh my God, we lost,
your DNA.
so much. So anyway, so do you want to like try, did we hit all the like introductory? I think we hit all the introductory like topics, and I guess unless, is there anything else you wanted to add in terms of like sort of like the foundations of your work or your?
Well, there was something that had popped into my mind, but it's since slipped out. So that's fine. We'll just keep rolling.
So I guess my next question is, and we want to get into your story, right? Which is what brought us together here, but is, what got you into, what led you into, obviously, apparently you were searching for your birth parents, but what really do you feel like led you into your ancestral work? And did you do like DNA?
That's exactly what I was going to mention on. Well, first of all, and I can touch on 2 points. One is, my lifestyle practice. I'll circle back to that. But I think what will resonate with people listening who are adopted, for many adopted people, there's this deep sense of unknowing when you know nothing about your bloodline. And it doesn't matter if you came into a family that loves you and has given you all the best that life has to offer, or you didn't have that experience. In either case, there's going to be a longing for wanting to know where you came from. And there's really no way to avoid that. I've never met anybody adopted who hasn't had that. It didn't matter what family you came into, whether your family was, full of love and gave you, you didn't want for anything, or you had a different experience. At the end of the day, there's going to be some want to know where you came from. And within my situation, so I'm white and I was adopted into a white family. I've noticed that when white adoptees are put into white families, there's even less of a conversation about your ancestral roots. When we see, for example, white families having transracial adoptees, there is a conversation there. Often it's not done well, right? Often parents miss the mark,
right?
That's a totally separate conversation to have. But I'm just saying there's at least an awareness of a lineage, an awareness of a cultural connection that one will openly probably be able to seek out. But in white to white adoptions, it's almost like there's no conversation. There's
right,
there's just
because
no
you're
conversation.
racialized white, and so there's no I mean I think there's a problem with whiteness in general, is
Yes.
what whiteness has done to all of us is like,
Yes.
is this assimilation, homogenization of all these really a diverse bunch of different nations and cultures and histories. Yeah.
So, and just for example, had I have been Korean and adopted into my family, there would always have been some understanding within me that my lineage is Korean.
Right.
And growing up, I could have an interest in Korea. I could seek that out. The family, if they were trying to keep me culturally connected, could do many, many things to facilitate that, right?
Right.
But that wasn't the case for me. And I certainly don't want to make any type of comparison between my situation and a transracial adoption situation, because there's no comparison. And yeah, it's a very difficult situation. But yeah, a white person going into a white family, it's like, for me, in my case, there was nothing to speak about. There was no lineage to talk about. There was no lineage to question. There was no conversation about where I had come from, other than I didn't come from my mother's womb. That was it. And so for me, I had a real sense of longing that I don't even think I really fully understood until I was in my mid-20s. And then it even just escalated. Like, I don't even think I really fully understood how much I needed to know my ancestry until I figured it out in the past few years. It's like I didn't know I was missing it until I knew about it. And then I felt a sense of connection that I didn't know I was missing, but I really have been missing.
Yeah, I'm just really feeling that. I mean, my experience with it, of course, is not the same at all. But it feels, just hearing you say that, it feels to me, I felt this really strongly in Ireland. And I think because there was a lot more mystery about my Irish lineage, because there had been more generations, like I lived Italian culture. So it wasn't like, like I didn't have that like distance. When I went to Ireland, I mean, the day I got there, like I walked out where we were staying onto this bog. It happened almost immediately. This feeling, the day I walked out, we were staying in this really cool place in Galway, in a town called Letterfrack. And
I'm very familiar with Galway. I've slept on the streets there.
Did you?
Yes.
Cool. It's a beautiful place. This was anyway, up in this beautiful bay, and I walked out onto a bog. We were near a bog, and all of a sudden I realized, and I was like 45, 46 when I went there. I'd been to Italy before that for the first time, but this was the first time I was in Ireland, and I realized I had been homesick my entire life. And I didn't realize it. So like I identified, like I didn't know. So that's sort of what the reason I'm sharing this is because it sounds similar to like knowing that there's this longing for something, or not even realizing it until after you've already.
There's actually a word, I came across it recently. I can't remember what it is. I want to say it's like a Norse word or something. And it literally means a longing for a home you've never been to.
I've heard that word. I don't remember what it is either, but I know what you're talking.
But you know it's there, and it's not the home, it's the land.
Right. And that's exactly it. That's like, I think
we all have that to some degree. Well, if you're tuned into it, then you have it. to some
I
degree.
mean, I think so. This has come up too in conversations with others about ancestral work, is that to varying degrees, we're all displaced from that connection. Like there's not been a people that have not been impacted by colonialism, capitalism, patriarchy, the climate devastation to climate, the end of peasant and village life and indigenous life that hasn't been impacted. And I think everybody feels it to some degree or another.
Oh yeah, of course, varying degrees. Some of us are majorly profiting off of all of that and our lifestyles and our whiteness and our ways, while others are still in the trenches of it, living it day to day in war and conflict and starvation and homelessness, and
like 2/3 of the world are like, So, but we're all bound to it. And just, I feel like touching on that is, I feel like particularly for white people that doing that work, which is also part of why I'm doing this, is doing that work of being in touch with that sense. And I think part of the assimilation and alienation process of whiteness, of settler colonialism, is a disconnect from that feeling. That's why we're not aware of it. It's like, we're not aware that, we're just like, we take on, here in the US, it's like we take on this American identity and the idea of entitlement that goes along with it, which is, indoctrinate, and then our racialized identity as white. And so then it's like, oh, we have no people. This is our people. Then we get, this like fundamentalism around it, which we're seeing so strongly right now, at least here in the US. I'm not tuned into how that's going in Canada, but I'm here in the US, that lack of history for people who are American has turned into white nationalism, where now we've identified with the United States as like this white construct or homeland. And it's like, and anybody who doesn't fit into this framework or paradigm, it's like, if you're not with us, you're against us. And so I feel
we have something similar to that in Canada. It's not as much white nationalism, I don't think, but it's definitely very much a sentiment of you're from here or you're not. You're a come from away. There's actually a whole play that came out, I think it was called Come From Away, and it might have hit Broadway, or maybe I forget the name of it, but it's recently gotten big the past few years. But this whole idea of, where are you from? Yeah, but where are you from? And it's in Canada that even whether you speak French or English or, appreciate and participate in different cultural festivals and fairs and, have friends from all around the world, or you're in touch with different foods, or whatever it looks like for a white person to digest multiculturalism, they're still, at the end of that day, where are you from? We have that too. Even though our government talks about, immigration and diversity being the fabric of Canada, in practice.
I mean, we did, here in the US, it's like, the Statue of Liberty, bring us your poor, your weak, your, and it's like, but, when that actually happens, we, shoot at them.
Yeah.
I mean, when people do show up at the border, they don't, we don't actually do that. And even when they get in, even if they get a green card or whatever they get their papers to even be here, in a documented way, they're treated as second class citizens. So it's really
slightly different reality here. We still have a big push for immigration because our numbers are so much smaller than the US. Like a quick Google, do you know how many people live in the US?
30 million.
Okay, so no, in Canada. You're in Canada.
What's
there's
that?
38 million people who live in Canada, and there's
300 million in the US.
329 million who live in the US. So
Yeah.
those numbers are enough to understand why there's a more acceptance from people and government for immigration.
Sorry, are they accepting Americans? I know a lot of people here want to move to Canada.
A lot of people have.
Yeah,
a lot of people have. And there's been like funny things you hear on the radio, like free land for people who are seeking political refuge from Trump, and you hear that every so often.
Mean, seriously, people are just, I'm actually, I feel like I'm actually like, I'm not that person. I'm like, I'm connected here. I'm staying with the trouble, like I'm staying here. But I definitely have to be honest that I've had my moments of like, why couldn't I live in Canada? Or
I mean, me alone, and we're a smaller business, not too small, but small enough. I probably help at least 5 people a year immigrate to Canada with their permanent residency. That's just me. And I don't even really work in that line of business. So there's lots of opportunity.
It's good to know.
We're kind of digressing a bit from the real
so let's
speed of what we want to talk
about. So we're talking about, so that's cool. Like it's like this is like, this is like getting into the flow and letting it move through us. And but yeah, so the question was, what brought you, into ancestral work? I mean, obviously, something attracted you to Della Medicina, and
right.
so you were doing this work and before you came to that and before the experience that we're going to share with everybody.
Right. So what brought me to your course was that I have been practicing herbalism and preventative medicine, holistic herbalism through probably the last 15 years, I want to say. I'm not a herbalist, so maybe I should just say plant medicine. Anyway, I've been working with herbs and plants at home as a lifestyle for about 15 years. That's how I've raised both my kids, my husband. We use preventative herbs. That's how we stay healthy. It's just part of our lifestyle. We don't use pharmaceuticals at home whatsoever. Like I would not take a Tylenol or an Advil for a headache. It just would not happen. And I don't even know when the last time that was. And that's because I do have enough information and enough access to different resources, whether I bought them at the store or wildcrafted them myself, that I know how to treat those things. So I've always been very interested in that. I've always been very interested in dream work and dream journeying. And I've done a lot of healing through dream journeying, very intentional work and healing. Some more, I guess, what you would consider modern Wiccan practices, which I've since made the connections, are rooted in Southern Italian folk practice. I also do like protection magic and the use of amulets and all these things. And I started connecting the pieces of all these interests that I have as a way of lifestyle are actually really rooted in traditional folk practice of Southern Italy. And when I made that connection right around that time, your course had popped up. And I was like, this is so interesting that this sort of hobby and lifestyle that I have is deeply connected to Southern Italy. And at this part of my life, before your course came, I knew that I was Italian, but I actually thought that the links had me all linked to Calabria. So I thought that, and maybe there's something
Was that,
there that I don't yet know.
did you do DNA?
Yeah, through DNA testing. But now I'm, there's been a lot that I've connected even more with Sicily and just practices that I do at home. And I'm just like, I'm picking up on these things. Just naturally, I'm drawn to these things. But, they must be deeply in my bones somewhere too. It's
Yeah. So did you find out you're Sicilian through your?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess that leads to another question is, or maybe something that maybe you could share for folks who either don't know their ancestry or are adopted, for like, what do you feel like are the like blocks, or what are you facing like when you start into ancestral work with that? Like, and what helps you the most?
First of all, yeah, you don't have a name. Even if you had a name, like one name could help you with your altar work or your prayer work or your dream work or something to anchor in on. Maybe it doesn't have to be a name, but even if it was like a town or a country or something for you, I guess that would be the most important thing that feels like an anchor. And
so even if it was just like, oh, Italy, like, you don't know.
I think that's enough.
Right.
I think that is enough, actually. It would be up to the individual, but whatever feels like enough of an anchor to have some connection, like one connection, I think can open up the floodgates. And even if you can't have that one connection, ultimately, I mean, we're talking about a lot of metaphysical stuff, right? So ultimately, you've just got to trust.
Yeah.
So that's really what I did. When I do ancestor altars, and I do that for ancestors that I have grown up with in my adoptive family that I know.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I know a lot of times when you're adopted, you also connect deeply with your.
Totally. Yeah. My mom's family, they were McPhersons from Scotland. I think it was the Isle of Man. And I lived in Scotland. I moved there when I turned 18. Like, I felt really connected to Scotland. And I love Scottish history and people and the magic of the Highlands. I'm connected to Scotland for sure, through them. And then my father's family is Irish. He was O'Hara, and they came over. And
oh, really? My great grandmother was an O'Hara.
Oh, there's a lot of O'Haras.
There is.
I think this is like one of the big ones. Oh, but you know what? Actually, my dad does have some O'Hara. I'll have to circle back with that, because he does have O'Hara in New York, I'm pretty sure. I'll have
that
to
would be
circle
wild.
back.
Wouldn't it be wild if we were related? That would be so cool, right?
But through the Irish side.
Through the Irish side. Yeah.
Yeah. So
they were a big family here. There was a whole bunch of them. So.
Oh yeah, my dad's mom came from 17 kids. Wow. And they came from 20, and huge families, the Irish Catholics.
Well, they were trying to repopulate their they this is a little off side thing, but like one of the things I learned in Ireland is like the saint of the town that my great grandfather was born in. It was the town of Keilimor, and the Saint Eimer, his goal in life was to like repopulate the world with Irish.
Wow.
It was like, because they had been they've been occupied. They're still occupied,
Yes.
and they've been through several famines, and so it's like the Irish definitely reproduced prolifically. Anyway, so your dad's Irish and your mom's Scottish, and
their families very much were Irish and Scottish. And my mom's family, they were colonial settlers. They settled in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. They were given their stolen land from the crown when they came. That was my mom's family. My dad's family would have come over as immigrants, like, because they had to. And I don't even know what year it was, but I think it was the early 1800s or mid or something like that. So that always felt good for me to know, but it never felt like it filled any type of sense of belonging, lost belonging that I had. It didn't feel that, right? So for me, it was incredible to go on ancestry.com. Anybody listening who's adopted, if you're not on ancestry.com or 23 or
23andMe?
Yeah, something, anything. It really helps place you in the world in a way that nothing else really will. Also, for those who aren't adopted who go on, just be careful, because I've heard people who found out they were in fact adopted, because once you log on, if you have a parent on there, it will say like mother, father, because the genetic coding is so tight. There's no way to mess that up.
My mom, I laughed because my mom and I both did ancestry.com, and when I saw it, because it comes up and I'm like, guess what? You're my mother.
Yeah.
But, I actually did. I had a woman message me because we were a match, and she was adopted, and she didn't know. So she messaged my mom, and I managed my mom's account. And so I responded to her. I helped her find, so her and I,
cousins?
We're cousins, and
Amazing.
I helped her find her mother. We found her mother together.
So I basically found my biological father that way. I had messaged a woman, we were connected, and my biological mother actually wasn't certain who my biological father was. She thought it was one of 3 people. Actually, for a really, really long time, I thought it was Israeli, because she thought for sure of the 3 people, it was the Israeli individual. But lo and behold, I tracked down this woman online, and I gave her 3 different people, and she said she matched one of them. She said, that person who you're talking about is my brother's son.
That's what we did. She said she had a basic idea, and then I called my mom, and and this was all obviously top secret, because we didn't want to, you have to be careful, right? Because we didn't want to blow it in the family that this person had given a baby up for adoption. Like, there was this whole bunch of things, and this
100%. My biological father doesn't know about me.
There's a bunch of ethics, right? And so
yes.
So I've never even told anybody about this other than my mom, because I promised her that it would, I don't know if she even.
Now you're telling the whole world, so.
Yeah, well, well, they don't know who it is. But
yeah,
anyway,
I had written to this woman. I'm gonna just call her an auntie for now, because I am gonna circle back to her. So I'd written to this auntie, and she had given me information. And then this helped me, just doing the whole ancestry thing helped me have a rooted link to Italy, which was really, really helpful, because I had remembered going to Italy and feeling this homecoming. And then she confirmed, yes, indeed, your biological father, we're Italian, So all that was like a real game changer for me. But that was a few years ago. So when I had saw your course come up, it was probably just a month or so before you had taught it, it just made sense because of my herbal practice. I do try at least once every 2 years to do some type of extra education to do with herbs, just to keep my mind. You probably do the same thing.
Yeah, I do.
To keep your mind sharp and fresh. And you never know how you're going to learn something new about a plant that you've been working with forever, and some new property. Not that you need a course to do that, but it's just a nice way to, you stay relevant, you stay on your toes, you stay educated.
You stay in it when you're hopefully building community or talking to other people. And
and that was just around this time that I was really making the connections of my practices at home lining up with traditional Italian folk practices of the South, as that's like what your whole course is about, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that was just like, this is incredible. Like, I couldn't believe that these practices I have are traditional practices of where I'm from. Like, that still blows my mind because no one taught them to me. I wasn't raised this way. These are literally, I was just a blank canvas, and these are things that I started doing when I was a teenager.
I think that's like, I feel like this is so important, you know, because I feel like in general we disregard. So it's like we talk a lot about like connecting with our like ancestral memory, and like, but when that really happens, I feel like it's so easy to dismiss it. But the truth is, like, and so I tell clients and people that I do ancestral work with, you know, sometimes it's like, even if, because, well, one of the questions always is, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, or like, or, you know, I'm just going through the motions or whatever. Like, I don't know. And I'm like, just keep doing it, because once you just start that engagement, like once you open that, like, even if at first it feels funky or awkward or, you know, not right, or maybe it's just not like congruent yet or anything, but like, if you just keep doing that, like the thing comes alive.
Yeah, and
So,
you make
like,
connections.
you start making connections, and then that, like, that intuition, or whatever you want to call it, that ancestral memory, something comes through that is not, it's something that's both inside and outside of us at the same time, but something that we were not aware of, you know. And so I feel like that's so important. It's the same with plants, right? It's like, that's part of why in Della Medicina, I'm like, don't, even if you've already had an experience with this plant, like, don't go back over it. Don't look it up in advance, not to withhold information from anybody, you know, but like, just to say, like, just try your best to practice being an open vessel. And so it's like, even if you're not at a place where you can even be open, like, just knowing that it's a possibility, that openness can happen, starts it.
Yes.
Like, it initiates it.
Yeah, and it's in you. It's just
It's in you. It's just part of being human.
You know, I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, like, you can't kill a witch. The witch will just be reborn. There's no killing a witch. And I just kind of feel like that's the same thing when you're tapped into your ancestral practices. They're just going to come out.
They're just going to come out. And they may not be, you know, and I think this is a whole other topic, but you know, some of it is about this idea of doing things right. And I think that it is good to be respectful and ethical with traditional practices. Like, I think that's like super important, and honoring the way that they've been structured, because though they have been structured a certain way, but then at the same time being able to allow them to take shape in emergence with, or symbiosis or symbiogenesis with who we are now. And I think that's what happens. And so I feel like having a structure of a course, or just having something, like you said, even Wiccan practices, where you've got some regimen, right? Or some discipline that creates the container for this, like, organic, intuitive, natural pattern to emerge.
Yes. And it's up to you to understand and recognize the connections, if they're to be made. Like, I wasn't making connections with my practice to Southern Italy. I didn't do that until just shortly before I found your course. For whatever reason, I wasn't making those connections. So just to say that, yes, you build up the container, and then it's up to you to figure out what links you to it and how. And if you want to do ancestral work, then those links are going to become a lot stronger.
Yeah, which is, so then, you know, it's like, it seems like sort of like once you open that, so it's a conversation, you're starting a conversation.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, and one of the things I like to say is that, you know, the universe is, you know, just inherently call and response, which I've been, so, right. Like, that's just how we,
Mhm.
and so I just want to attribute where I first heard those things from, because I feel like it's important. I heard in, this is a teacher, this was with a teacher of Trika Shaivism, which is a form of Hinduism, by the
Mhm.
name of Shambhavi Sarasvati, who explained satsang, which is a
Mhm.
style of teaching,
Mhm.
as call and response. So, basically what it is you sit with a teacher and the students just ask, the conversation is open.
Mhm.
You just ask a question. So that's the call. And then the teacher just spontaneously, improvisationally responds.
And that's the satsang.
Satsang.
Mhm.
And then also West African, there's a style of West African music, which I don't know a lot about.
With the drum, it's a drumming style.
And I guess it's the foundations for modern jazz and all sorts of other types of
it's a call and response.
It's call and response. And so, they've mastered, that, and, it's, I believe, and I'm not an expert on that style of music at all. So, but it sounds to me like it's a very similar thing to being in the presence of, working with a plant, working with our ancestors, working with an altar, working with all of the beings that we're in the web with, is that, you poke the web, right? You like push in, or you call into it, and you say, hello, ancestors, or whatever, mugwort or whatever. That's just the way universal law works. It's physics that you are going to get a response. Now, there's a whole bunch of things that we do to resist it and block it. And,
yes.
Yes. And that's part of the work.
Yes.
But
totally.
Once you start, and this is like, I've also used the metaphor a lot of rhizomatic networks, where it's like, anybody anywhere can step into it. Like, it's not, you don't need special training. You don't need a certificate.
Yes.
You don't need, it's nice to have help. It's nice to have a teacher, it's nice to have a support group or a network of people that are doing the work that so you're not on your own, but
anybody can tap into it.
Anybody can tap into it.
It's very similar to Reiki. Reiki practice in the West is a very, very colonial practice. The way that we have it in a weekend, you get your certificate, you do this and you do that, and it's a secret and this and that. But traditionally in Japan, that Reiki energy is something that everybody has. Everybody can tap into that. And it's very, just reminds me of this idea of it's something we all have within us that we can choose to tap into.
Right.
When we want to use that or need that or have a calling for it.
So you did that. So you tapped in.
Yes. So then in your class, we focused a lot on taking a herb, for what it is, not bringing any prior relationship to taking it for that week. And then we would report back on our findings and how we felt. And then you'd talk about how it was used in Southern Italy. That was kind of more or less the premise of the course, I would say, is exploring plant by plant and sharing information. So in the last week, especially, we were going to work on the last 2 weeks was to do with dreaming, right? Herbs and dreaming.
Yeah.
Now, because I'm a dreamer, I was, bringing it into my dream world from the very beginning. That was just the way I was going to approach it. And that very last week we did mugwort, I believe it was. And does that sound right? Mugwort?
The last week we did mugwort. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So mugwort for me is a herb that I typically can't have anywhere near me at bedtime. I don't think I had mentioned that to you, but I have a very strong reaction to it. And I normally have dreams that are too intense, like just way too intense, and I won't get any rest.
Yeah, a lot of people have that reaction to mugwort.
Yeah, I would use it very purposely in a dream journey if I had to, or just a meditation even would be better for me. But, I thought this is part of the class. I'm just going to roll with it. I think it was a flower essence. So I said, you know what?
It wasn't elixir. It's actually both.
Yes. It was a beautiful elixir.
Yeah.
That's right.
With a moonlight flower essence. Yeah.
Also, I forgot to tell you, I had Herkimer diamonds pulled out right around that time, and I normally don't pull them out, and I didn't realize that it was.
Oh yeah, because the elixir I make with this, because I live in Herkimer Diamond. This is where the Herkimer diamonds live.
Wow.
And we have them everywhere. They're just like they pull up out of anyway. There's a company here that uses water filtered through Herkimer diamonds to make their vodka.
Amazing. And I had read that after, because I had been dreaming about them. I was like, okay, I think I need to bring some to my bedside, because I think they want me to sleep beside them for now. Anyway, and then I had, so all these things, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go with the mugwort. We're just going to do it. And so that whole week, I had a dream, and I had said this in our class to everybody. I couldn't understand it. I had a dream every single night, 7 nights in a row, of being on the water on a boat. I never dream about boats. That's not something that's part of my reoccurring dreams, or a place I go to feel safe, or it didn't have any type of connection to me. Now I say that, but at the same time, my dad is a sailor. So I am familiar with boats. It's just, I don't typically dream about them. So these 7 nights on mugwort, I dreamed about being on a boat. And one night was with my dad, one night it wasn't. I just couldn't piece anything together, I said, I know there's a message meant to come from this, but I can't figure out what it is. Well, my husband and I have been planning to move for the past year, and we were trying to figure out exactly where we want to move. And a big part of my prayer work and altar work and ancestral work was that I'd been asking for guidance to figure out where to move to. So these dreams, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe it's trying to tell me I need to move near the water. And one of the locations actually was on the ocean, this little ocean seaside community. And I thought, maybe the dream world's telling me to move there. So I tell my husband, he goes, well, the other location's on a river that your dad sails on. So basically I was back to square one, because here both are narrowed down locations to do with boats and rivers and sailing. So nothing could be pieced together. But the last day of our course, and it was a full moon, I had a dream that I was on the bow of the boat, almost like Jack and Rose Titanic style, on the bow of the boat with my arms open. And I felt complete bliss. Like I have never felt more bliss in my whole life than in the boat in that moment. So, and it's just sailing into the unknown. When I woke up, I said to myself, you know what? I think I had all those dreams just to lead up to that one dream last night of that blissful moment at sea. Like nothing else really mattered. I still couldn't all piece it together, but the fact that I had that powerful dream, it almost felt like a cellular cleansing, like a really deep gift I was given. And I was completely satisfied. So I left it at that, didn't think about it again until 5 nights later. And I'll tell you what happened. I'll have to go back to that 5 nights later after. So the next day after your course, I said to myself, you know what? That's it. I got to up my game. I got to track down my ancestors. I can't do this anymore. I need a name. I need a location. I want to know where my people came from. So remember I was telling you about that auntie I had found online? Mm-hmm. So I had remembered that I had written to her about 4 years ago. So I went back to her and she was still there, and I wrote to her and she was super open and kind, like she was the first time. And she was able to give me my biological, this is paternal, great grandfather's name and his wife my great great grandmother. And through her information, they were her grandparents. Through her information, pieced with maps, family trees, I called them maps, sorry, family trees on ancestry.com, I was able to link and figure out when they were born, where they lived. They came from Riesi in Sicily. When they came to America in 1903, they immigrated over, how many kids they had, when they landed in New York, where they moved to, which I think was Chelsea, Massachusetts. Yes. And they lived there till 1938. And then they moved to Boston until like the mid 50s, 60s, something like that. I could see their addresses. I could see his occupation was listed as a barber. Now, whether that's true or not, but their children's children, I could see so much information. Like in one way, it's like, whoa, this is invasive and creepy. But on the other way, for me, as someone being adopted, that meant the world to me. That was like, that felt like a life-changing moment for me, because it just felt like this doorway to my past was open, and it had been opened a tiny crack, and it felt to me like it was open like halfway, and when you go from crack to halfway, that it's not all the way open, but it's really open.
That's major.
So I wrote to her the day after our last class. She wrote me back the following day. So our last class was on a Wednesday. And she wrote me back, and I got those names, my ancestors' names, information, all of that, where I came from in Sicily on a Friday. And I had been praying for more of a connection to my ancestors for a little while. But when I really put myself out there, it came back immediately. So once I had their name, now keep in mind we're in October, so I have the Samhain altar all built up, and it's in full force because of, that's the time of year it is. Now I decide, hey, I'm going to take these names. I'm going to put something representing this on my altar. Right. That to me was incredible to be able to do that. And I've since realized my next goal is I'm just desperate for a photo of them, which I think I probably can get, since it was this auntie's grandparents. She likely has a photo of her grandparents. So I might circle back to her. But where it gets really interesting, where I feel that I had direct help and guidance from my ancestors, is because, remember, I had told you we had been searching for a home for the past year. And where we live, the market is incredibly competitive. Like, homes are up at least 100,000 just in the past year.
It's happening here too. It's happening. Yeah.
Okay. It's like you have 15, 16 bids on a house easily.
Yeah.
Like you almost need to go at least 60,000 over asking to even have your offer looked at. Okay. So it's the same for you.
Yeah. It's not that even in, this is even in this community, which is like a depressed post-industrial Rust Belt, it's like, we're not going that high, but 30,000-40,000 over is happening. It's crazy.
Yeah. So this is just kind of what is in the back of your mind when you're searching for a house and a new place to live, right? That's just what it is right now.
Yeah.
So that was a Friday. I had their names. Friday night, I do some work at my altar. I name them. I give thanks to them. I do a smudge. I light some candles. I do all the things at the time that made sense and felt right. A lot of gratitude. Reflected about them all Friday, Saturday, Sunday, about coming over and what that would have felt like. And then the Italian diaspora in New York and Boston at the time. And, just the horrors they had to live through. Unemployment and slum living. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
These are things that I more deeply reflected on, because now all of a sudden it was personal, right?
Right.
Sunday evening. And now that I've named my great grandmother, I'm consciously, actively asking for her help and guidance and to get us a home. So Sunday evening, this is 2 days after I've named her, a house comes on the market. It goes into our portal online only because the realtor made a mistake and didn't list it publicly. For whatever reason, it only went into our listing agent portal. Monday morning, we're the first people in there. There's only us and another couple that looked at it that day, that whole day. And this is a beautiful historic home in a really beautiful town along the river, maintained, like very, very, very lucky find that we got this. So Sunday goes on the market. Monday, we go in, we're the first people to look at it. The realtor says to us, now they're not taking any offers until Friday. So we're going to have to see what the market does all week. And we're like, okay, well, you know, I guess it's to be expected.
Yeah.
They call us Monday night. They say they decided they're going to take offers as they come. The sellers change their mind. We're like, okay. So by Tuesday morning, we had an offer in. We were engaged with them in the back and forth buying process. By Tuesday, we had a deal.
Wow.
Now, what's even more interesting is Monday, after we had the virtual viewing, when I went to bed that night, I had a dream. And in my dream, I was in the backyard of this house. And I get chills when I think about it. I'm standing in the backyard of this house, and all of a sudden, I'm feeling the exact same physical sensation and spiritual sensation that I felt when I was on that boat in my last dream of that boat dream. So I had already decided in my mind that that boat dream represented a safe, blissful state of peace. And now here I am in this dream of this. I've looked at so many homes, you have to know, the past. We put bids on other homes, and I'm always uncertain, like, is this the right choice? But here I am in this backyard, and I'm feeling that connection to that most blissful state I've ever been in, even though it was my dream. So I know, like, this is it. This is where we're supposed to move to.
Right.
So we end up going firm on the house, and everything clears out of our way. We didn't compete because the house didn't go public.
It's incredible.
We went under asking because we were like, we don't love the house.
That's incredible.
We are inspector, water, sewer, the bank drafts, all that stuff. Like, the inspector's like, normally I'm booked 15 days in advance, but I have an opening tomorrow at 9 a.m. That's incredible. After we made an agreement, and it was like that for everybody. It was like every door that could possibly open, even with the bank moving around our money, they're like, it takes a minimum of 5 days, and it was a tight deadline. Money was there in 2 days. Every single corner we went, doors opened up. And there's probably more I'm forgetting, but it's insane how it all lined up. Something really, really, really magical is that our closing date is January 6th. This is just a random closing date. We were really open to whatever date the sellers wanted. Our agent suggested this day for other reasons. We were like, yeah, whatever. Didn't think about it twice at the time. And I think I had told you this. So January 6th in lots of places around the world, but do you know what is celebrated in Italy on January 6th? The Epiphany.
Right.
So my great grandmother's name is Epifania.
Yeah, this was what really got me. It was just like, whoa.
Yeah. When I
got the chills all over right now.
Oh,
unbelievable.
I brought to tears when I realized that was the closing. I still get brought to tears now. And I just think of,
I mean, she brought it. I mean, I was like, it was her.
Oh yeah.
So amazing.
Without question. And I like to think too of the beautiful, not just her name and the date, but I also like to think of the story of Befana and the witch bringing gifts to the children. And here I am bringing the gift, from my Italian patriarch.
I mean, I'm almost in tears here. I mean, it's just one of the most beautiful ancestral connection stories I've ever heard. And I can't even imagine being adopted to have moved through this journey to this point where you've got this ancestor just like coming in and
waiting to be
clearing the way for you.
Yeah. In every
I love it.
way. I'm just like completely surrendering to all this. We're actually changing provinces. We're moving 4-hour drive from where we are, like a complete lifestyle change from a city to like a tiny little town, but it's closer to my parents. And we're also making a choice that brings a lot of joy to a lot of other people too, not just ourselves, because we're moving closer to family.
Yeah.
And we have a toddler, and you know how it is. So
all
just feels like it's all right and lining up really beautifully. And I'm just, trusting.
And I mean, I feel like part of it for me is that like, so like I was saying, like, I feel like, so it's all there, but like, it's like, that makes it sound so easy. Like, oh, you can just like tap in and like get it all. And it's like, well, there's all these like things that are like, there's so many multiple variables that are happening, stories and beings and ghosts and things that are like in our systems and in the systems that we're the ecology of where we are doing the work, that makes it so, it's not like that. It's not like, oh, I can just like tap in. I mean, for some people, maybe it is. Sometimes that happens for sure. But like, I feel like, one of the obscurations, so to speak, or however you want to call it, one of the blocks is being in a place where you have the nervous system and emotional, as well as resource capacity to surrender.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's like, sometimes it's like, that can be, that's a huge discipline and practice. And, and I don't think, I think the idea of like ripping off the Band-Aid quick is only good in some situations. Like for some of us at some points of time, and I know I've been there, like making big changes like that can be really destabilizing. So it's like, right. So it's like, I feel like all these things just come together in the process of like, when you are ready for that to happen. And then it's just beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's such a blessing. Mm-hmm. It's such a grace when it's a delight, when there's a like contact is made like that. And that's what it feels like. It's like, whoa.
I mean, I'll have this connection now for the rest of my life, and I'll pass it on to
exactly.
And it's not something that's ever going to go away. And I hope it only gets stronger.
Right. And that's usually how it goes, right? It's like it proliferates. It accumulates.
Mm-hmm. And I'm satisfied with the connection that I've made with this great grandmother. I don't feel that I actually need to connect with anyone else in my lineage. I don't think about anyone else. Like, because there would have been a great grandmother and a grandmother. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel.
Yeah, well, maybe you really just tapped into it. Well, I mean, obviously, so she's holding everything. We all are.
I think for me, what makes her so symbolic, and my husband's like, to what end? She had a mother and they had a mother, and where does it end? And I'm like, well, for me, I think for her story, she was 16, I think, and she moved to America, and what she would have gone through, and she left her homeland, and she made that migration choice because she had to, or whatever her circumstances were. She had a 1-year-old at the time and came over, and then she had 5 more kids here. That story was what makes me feel connected and gives me strength. And I think I only need that one story. So I guess that goes back to what I was saying is, if you can just have one anchor, whatever kind of grounds you in to tap into. Because I was doing the ancestral work without her name, for sure. I feel divinely guided all the time, and I'm certain sometimes it's ancestors helping. Totally. But when I named her, then it was like, 2 days later or whatever, the timeline was just exponentially accelerated. But I don't think you need a name. I don't think it's that. I was just able to put more of my intention in it with a name.
Right.
But I mean, what's in a name? I don't need a name.
No, I mean, I'm not adopted, so I don't know. But when people, I've had my mysteries, like I've had, I actually found, my great grandfather, my grandfather never ever met him. He, because my great grandmother, they were in the US. Her and my great grandfather, she got pregnant for my grandfather in the US. And then for whatever reason, she decided to move back to Italy. So she took the 3 older kids, 2 had been born here, 1 had been born in Italy, and she was pregnant and got on a ship and went back to Italy. Wow. Had my grandfather in Calabria in her village, and then couldn't get back to the US because the war broke out, World War I. And she left in 1914, went back to Calabria, had my grandfather. And then I don't know why they did that. I don't know what happened between them. I'll never know. In the meantime, he got married. He got somebody else pregnant. He had joined the army as a clarinetist. He got out through World War I, got out of the army, and then got somebody else pregnant, got married, had another child. But we never knew what happened to him because my grandfather ended up actually getting stuck in Calabria. He couldn't get out of Calabria because I'm not sure what exactly happened. Some of it was the Immigration Act, the Italian Immigration Act in the mid-20s. He didn't get here till he was 14. So he never met his father. We never knew, and nobody talked about it, of course. Mm-hmm. We did know his name. And myself and one of my cousins, we tried. We had a few stories. We knew he was near Kingston, New York. That was one of the stories. So we had a few things, could never find anything. And it was kind of like that. It was like, I just kept searching. And then I started ramping up my ancestral work, not even regarding him, but just ramping up just really diving in. I was doing, working with a friend of mine and flower essences and plants and just really. And it's interesting where it takes you, and this is the thing, because a lot of my, I guess, initial desire doing ancestry work was to really connect with the Irish side of my ancestry, because I had been already immersed in Italianness, so that wasn't as much of a mystery to me. But my Italian ancestors were like, no, you really need to be doing this. Like they just made themselves known so strongly. And so I started, I was working deeply with them, and it was just like that. I opened up ancestry.com one day, put in a few search terms. All of a sudden, this whole thing, I found newspaper articles because through this like random tree that somebody who had married somebody, it was like one of those things. The guy wasn't even related to me, found articles about him because he had been in jail. He had been arrested for bigamy in Kingston. And then from there, I found everything, and ended up actually meeting. And then we had DNA matches once we figured out who they were. So he had a whole other family. He has 4 granddaughters that are still alive. That I met one of them. We connected, had lunch together. And we have DNA matches. So, because his name was Frank Fazio. So it was just like, how many millions of Frank Fazios everywhere. Anyway, we found him. We found out everything that happened, and not everything, but we found out a lot. A lot. And so, so why I'm saying this is because, I've had my mysteries, I'm not adopted, but so, one thing I've always told people is just start with something. And even if you don't have a country, so even if you just know you're European, like just start, start looking, start listening.
Like listen to what you're drawn to, go with that.
Exactly. And it's like music. So I just actually listened to this great webinar with Sabina Magliocco, who's a anthropologist and an Italian immigrant, American. First, she's immigrated herself, I believe, when she was a child, and she's done a lot of research on Southern Italian and Italian American folk medicine. Anyway, she just did this great webinar at Harvard. It was free to the public, about cultural appropriation, and it was great. One of the things she said is music, food, and stories are the three easiest myths, are the three most transmissible cultural traditions.
Mhm.
And so, and I would add language, that if you start listening to different types of music from wherever you suspect, right?
Mhm.
That your ancestors could have been originated from. Language, music, and then foods or stories. I feel like a lot of times that can start to open those doorways that will lead you hopefully into
Food especially. And you know what? I have this joke with my friends. I've been telling them not to bring around anything but Italian wine, Sicilian Italian wine. Like, I don't want to drink it if it's not from Sicily, because
I do the same thing.
I feel like it's an ancestral practice.
Yeah. Plus, it's the only wine that doesn't make me sick. I don't know why, but it's just like it's just yeah. So, well, that is an incredible story, and it just inspires me to hear, and it makes me so happy for you.
Well, I hope it brings some sort of like attainable sense of just a sense of it being attainable for people who are adopted, that for everybody.
I think that's what really that's what really like touched me was it's like just that this is something that is open to everybody, that
yes,
that
you can be a blank canvas.
You can be a blank canvas
as long as you're committed to touching that piece of yourself that you've been longing to touch. You just have to have that commitment and anchor yourself in whatever way makes sense for you.
Even if you don't know. And I think that's the other part of it. It's like, it doesn't have to be real solid at first. It'll get that way. But like, even if it's just like, this is all I have, and you're just like shooting at, I think to me, sometimes it's just you just got to show up and, think, like you said, a canvas is like, just show up with your paintbrush. That's all you have to do. And
also minimally too, like we all came from someone's womb. They came from someone, and they came with someone, and they came from someone. So even on that level, I mean, you can conceptualize thinking about that. You can connect to that. You came from someone who came from someone. Just a few generations back, your egg was in their body, and their eggs were in their body, and we're all very connected. So you can feel that if you close your eyes, or at least I can feel that.
Totally. I felt that. I think about DNA. So I imagine those like DNA strands, and I think about how they've been alive, like from like that,
yeah.
Right? Like it's like, so whatever that egg and sperm, those DNA strands met and then created, a whole person from those DNA strands, and that person's full of DNA strands. And when they have a child, those DNA strands still, like they never stop like living, right? Like since the beginning of time, those have been like pulling. It's like, I think of it as like a thread of light that just like is just being carried from person to person. And so certainly they alter, they recombine, but there's nothing new about them. right? They're unchanged. They're just combining into different forms. It's reformulation every single time, but it's all the same. And so it's like, of course we have everything that we need already.
And we're all anchored in.
Yeah.
So just take the time to tap into it and make the commitment to tap into it and just be open and, you know, use herbs to try to help heighten that sense like we talked about, or like for me, joining your course was really helpful because it kept my mind focused on ancestry work.
And I think I think anything that helps you focus.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I think devotion is a part of it, you know, is like, it's like, just really, and I feel like when you move from devotion, and commitment is another way but for me, like the thought of devotion, it takes off helps me with my perfectionism, because like I can definitely, you know, not want to make mistakes, or, you know, I'm always want to do my best, and, you know, that kind of thing. But like when I think of it as just like a form of I'm just so devoted and so in love with this practice.
Yeah.
That I don't have to do it right. Like I just do it out of that place. And then yeah, I think anything that helps you focus, that helps you to, whether it's a subscription to ancestry.com or
you're reading that keeps your mind focused on it, or
a journaling practice.
Yep. Journaling practice would probably be a great way, because the streams of consciousness type journaling.
Yep. And dream work has been, that's another, that's a whole other podcast, but which I should do at some point. But I mean, that definitely has
oh yeah, dream work. I'm just like, have a problem, let's just dream about it. Get our answers in the dream world. Well, anyway, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Jordan.
So happy to share this. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can certainly email you, and you can pass it along to me, and I'll
put my email in the. All right. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.